All right. Welcome to the Healthy Indoors Live Show. I'm your host, Bob Krell. I'm founder and publisher of Healthy Indoors Magazine. And hey, thanks for joining us on this fine Thursday. I am super excited today. We're joined by a guest who I have just had undying respect for. A gentleman that I've known for, I'm ashamed to admit, a lot of years. It's like, so without further ado, he's really has you know this guy's been a perennial force in this industry forever, and he's the most modest guy. I'll never admit it. But Terry Brennan, he was co-founder of Cam Roden Associates. That's how you pronounce it, right? Cam Roden.
Yeah,
And you've been in the industry for 40 plus years ish.
yeah, since 1979, really.
Yeah, wow,
So,
that's a while. I mean, I started in '86, and I thought I was old, but I mean,
you are old,
you,
Bob.
I am old. I know that's the problem. But one of the things, Terry, you've always been like just the most humble yet brilliant guy in this industry, and you're just I mean, I'm gonna keep blowing wind up your skirt, but you're the most likable dude. You just are. Everybody loves you, man. I mean, it's like, and it's because you actually are humble and super knowledgeable, and you're really just a great person to speak with, and you just seem to you've always been at the front of a lot of the initiatives in the industry. I know you were one of the principal authors of the Building Air Quality book with the EPA, right, years and years ago.
Yeah.
That's a long time. Susan Galbraith, and who else? Who else is on that? Who else wrote that?
Bill Turner and
That's
Laura
right, Bill
Oatman
Turner.
from the
Okay.
Minnesota Department of Health were involved in that. And then on the EPA side, Betsy Agel was the uh, project manager for the Indoor Environments Division, the Indoor Air Division it was back then.
And what's interesting is that you've been just quietly involved in research, and just you're a regularly featured presenter, or you have been throughout your career. I know like over the years, I think we met in the early 1990s. I was trying to place that today when I was thinking about it, and remember there used to be a publication upstate New York called Business Journal. I think it was Central New York Business Journal or something, and they used to do
Yeah.
events. We met like, and,
Yeah.
and they would have like quarterly or something, and usually they'd be in Syracuse. And I think we both presented at one back in the early 90s on indoor air quality, like 91 or 92. And I think that's when we first met face to face. Um, and right out of the blocks, I said, "Well, this guy knows his stuff. I could learn from this man." And we just had, over the years, we had so many opportunities to cross paths, and I guess we were
Yeah.
competitors in a weird way, but I never felt like you and I were competitors. I always viewed you as a colleague.
Yeah, that's generally my philosophy in life. It's much better sharing and cooperating than not.
Yeah, and it's funny that I think maybe a lot of people don't adopt that, and they should, right? Just a
Well,
little. So you're retired, and we were talking about that in the pre-show. Or you're semi-retired. So
mostly,
tell us what that means. What does that mean?
it's a lot like in The Princess Bride being mostly dead.
Okay. I
I'm,
don't even have
I'm
a
most
follow-up for that.
mostly retired.
So I mean, you're still slightly involved in the industry. You still, like you mentioned, you still do some consulting work on a limited
Yeah,
basis.
yeah, yes. I do some consulting work and I'm going through the lab and the office files and it's like God, let's see, it's like 102 file drawers of case files and research project, all the documentation for the research projects and technical information. And it's odd that I have 30 file drawers of technical information, but I never go to it. I just search on the web and I can find a copy of what I'm looking for faster usually than if I go to the file drawers.
Well, I mean, that is one of the things that has changed.
Yeah.
Our access to information, both good and bad, is a lot more readily available. But it's interesting. I mean, you've been I mean, you've really had a part in so many pieces of the puzzle that make up this industry. And one of the things I wanted to really highlight is that your approach. to the indoor environmental issues was always from a building scientist standpoint. I remember from this, I believe, right? That was always your tack. 'Cause I remember you first introduced me, maybe mid '90s or late '90s, talking about using blower doors and doing that, pressurization testing.
Yeah.
And in the original IAQ guys didn't do that. And I know you came from that group with Bill Turner and all you guys that all did that, but most
Right.
of us really were not attuned to that at all. And yeah, you changed my whole direction in the early 2000s from that. I went and say, hey, I better get some BPI accreditation and start,
Yeah.
start learning this stuff because it's like, this is I was leaving a lot of the knowledge on the table for too many years, and I'd be too quick to do testing.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be like, studying coyotes without thinking about the forest ecology and all the other creatures and plants that are involved in their life. The
No,
indoor environments like that.
it makes sense. So I remember. Here's one. I'm going to keep throwing stories back because all the years we've known each other. I remember one time
I
we were.
deny everything in
Yeah,
domain proof.
yeah, just go categorically put a blanket denial on it, and you'll be all set.
Yeah.
But I remember we were out we went out on some
Or
project.
Shaughnessy's fault.
It was Shaughnessy's fault. Well, we were out on some project somewhere on some, doing for odors in an apartment building. And I was like
Oh,
getting ready
yeah.
to go down the path of saying, let's take samples and do GC mass spec analysis on it. And you're like, why don't we take pieces of each individual constituent in the building, stick them in a mason jar and whiff it?
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, that makes way too much sense.
And sometimes it works good. You find it, and what's really good about that is when you find it and you ask the people who are having the problems in the building, is this the smell? If it's the smell, they know it instantly, and now they believe that they can trust us.
No, it makes total sense, and I think again, you've always, and that's one of the things that I've always just super respected and really marveled at with you is that you just always use a very common sense approach to things. Not that you're not very scientifically technical, because you are. I mean, I mean, I mean, look you've got a psychometric chart on your chest.
Yeah, really.
I mean, you establish credibility as soon as the show
Another
started.
fashion statement, right?
Well, maybe we're both known for that. Here, let's
All
make
the
sure we get a good
fashion
look at it.
statements,
Yeah,
yeah.
there you go. Yes. What is the absolute humidity in your current abode? So, uh, you, I mean, you've had just like a remarkable journey in this industry, and you've really, I think you've been at the forefront of just a lot of the stuff that we do today, um, which is just remarkable. Um, and I was always amazed at what a road warrior you were too. You just be everywhere all the time. You traveled so much.
Traveling, yeah.
That
Well,
was tough, right?
that was an oversight on my part when I figured out that my career path was going to be building science, and it didn't occur to me that you can't say, "Wow, that's pretty interesting. Could you bring that in on Tuesday?" You kind of have to.
You had to go.
You
You
have
had
to
to
go to
go
the
there.
building. If you don't go to the building, you're probably not going to figure it out.
Yeah, and so that's a downside there. You kind of drew yourself into a life of hotels.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't particularly. I enjoy being other places, but I don't really enjoy getting there that much.
Well, especially now, right? It hasn't gotten any better in the last several years.
Oh, when it really got horrible. The first plunge into horrible travel was when they deregulated the airlines.
Hmm When they could just like keep taking inches away from your seat space.
Yeah, it was horrible. And because a lot of the places that I was traveling to weren't Disney World or San Francisco or Los Angeles, my average ticket price doubled
Yeah.
with deregulation.
And so you flew. Did you fly out of Syracuse mostly, or did you fly out of
Yeah,
Albany? Okay,
yeah,
so Syracuse is
Syracuse
terrible
mostly.
expensive.
Yeah,
Terrible expensive.
Syracuse has always been very expensive.
Awful. Yeah, it's crazy. It still is. I mean, it hasn't gotten any better. If anything, it's gotten you get less space for more dollars. I mean, I'm waiting for the point where they start selling airline tickets and the seat is the optional thing. You don't get a seat. Like, it's like a bus and you're standing up holding the handle.
Like a Chevy Blazer. Remember Chevy Blazers? The the back seat and the passenger seat were options
Yeah, I mean,
in the Blazer.
optional,
Yeah,
optional seat. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, they're charging for bags now. So they won't give you any snacks. I get the snacks; that isn't that important. But like I kind of like to not have my knees. And I'm a little guy, and I'm crowded.
I don't understand how same with me. I'm 150 pounds and 5'9", and I I fill up those seats on those regional airplanes. I don't
Yeah,
know
coach
how.
is truly uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Really.
but you're at the point in your career where if somebody does fly you somewhere, you probably can demand first class and at least get that.
First class does actually help a lot because they treat
More
you
comfortable.
almost like you're a human being.
That's yes, okay. So I found that on a trip a few weeks ago where things got a little messed up, and you're right. If you're a first class traveler, you get treated a lot better than everybody else on the plane.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for that privilege, they charge you like twice the price for the ticket. But
Yeah, yeah. It's way expensive to travel anyway.
yeah,
So
yeah, it's no fun.
it's
Travel's not what it used to be. I mean, I think since 9/11, it's been the regulatory and all, just the weights and delays, and I'm not sure we're any safer either, but whatever, we're going through that. You know, we're going through that exercise every time. But
we do.
and now since the pandemic is like, I mean, like, traveling with a mask
Oh
on your
yeah.
face and
I haven't flown actually the last 2 or 3 years.
oh, okay.
Trying to remember the last time I actually flew.
Yeah, it's really
Uh,
well, you don't have to wear your mask anymore, but my last
hmm.
trip, this is the best part. I went to a conference and
Well,
following week got COVID again. So that was
you probably should though because well, I haven't looked at the data in 3 or 4 weeks, but yeah, the death rate was climbing again,
I,
and
this is gonna be around for a while.
you can't depend on case case numbers anymore because
Mhm.
people test at home.
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and
that's true.
nobody reports that data or collects that data. So
Mhm.
that's almost completely useless for us now.
Yeah, it's been a challenge.
Hospitalizations are another one you can look at.
Well, as far
But
as census in the hospital, seeing what the
yeah, but
available beds.
when the death rate starts climbing again, there's something going on. And there's a
Well,
lot more cases out there.
so yeah, I mean that's has from your perspective, have you seen you know a shift in the industry in the indoor environmental side? Maybe for general public and also on the industry side. Uh, are we globally more attuned to indoor environmental concerns now since we've been hit with a aerosolized virus, or is this a short? I guess my question is the long question is, will there be a paradigm shift as a result of this, or is this just a short thing that we're dealing with and we'll go right back to stupidity again?
I I I can't judge anymore.
Well, what's your perspective at least?
Well, clearly, COVID, SARS-2 is an organism disease of indoor air. That's where nearly all of the transmission occurs is in indoor spaces. So it is an indoor air quality problem in many ways, and it, it and worldwide as a species we've handled it very poorly.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't disagree with that. Um, and but this I've been saying this for like the last 2+ years now. This should be a launch pad for us, I believe, as at least let's say even just our country. I can't speak globally, but just for our country, that we should take things a little bit more seriously as far as how we do our indoor built spaces, and really make the consideration of the healthiness for the occupants kind of an important concern. I would like to hope we could do that.
Uh, there are certainly lots of us who are trying to do that.
Yeah. So I mean,
But
I guess yeah, but will we go? I guess will we go back? To
science
business as usual.
has lost a lot of cachet
It's
over the past 10, 15 years.
yeah, yeah. That's. I'm. We had Dr. Dave. Do you know David Krause? West?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So I figured you knew Dave. Dave's
Yeah,
been on the show a
absolutely.
lot, and he having been a public health official, now he's a private sector practitioner now, but he
Yeah,
was a public health official on two different stints with the Florida Department of Health, and he
yeah.
always said that we at the early stages of the pandemic, I kept saying, well, CDC, and he's like, you're expecting these entities, to behave in ways they're not going to. They've been gutted the last 20, 30 years, and they're mostly political hacks. And like he was saying that right from the start, he goes, you're not going to get saved by these people.
I was surprised at how badly that was managed initially, with
Yeah.
with the testing not being effective and widespread.
Well, with everything, honestly, I mean, we didn't handle it well at all. And it was funny. I read an article from back in 1918 with the Spanish flu,
Yeah.
and it seems that this resistance to wearing masks is not a new American trait. In
Oh.
1918, people were there was a protest in San Francisco with over 10,000 people bitching and moaning about having to wear face coverings and protesting in 1918.
Yeah.
Saying it's like this is against our rights that we shouldn't have to do. So this is nothing new. What does that mean?
Anyway, but if you read the oldest literature in any culture, you find that people behaved in those 5,000-year-old stories just exactly like we behave now.
So
Look at the Iliad and the Odyssey, and
yeah.
or read the Peloponnesian Wars.
I haven't read that any of that.
Oh.
I guess that's what I'm going to do.
Well,
when
Bob,
I go
not gonna
toward
live
retirement,
forever. Get
I'll
your
actually
ass in gear.
I know. I'm running out of years too. I don't have that much time on the clock.
But the Peloponnesian War, that series of documents were written by a retired Athenian general, and he described the plague that decimated Athens, which is why Sparta won. And at the end of 40 years of war, Athens lost because of a plague, and he was just a brilliant observer, and kind of laid out a number of the fundamental principles of public health back in those days.
Interesting. And those principles still hold water today, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, or the other really, if you can find any of the remnants of the Roman army's camp hygiene principles, they had a school that devoted to camp hygiene, and which is in a great many ways why they were an effective army.
Mm-hmm. They actually they reduced some of the massive plague-like situations. They still ate off of lead.
Well, they didn't eat well.
They didn't have it totally straight.
It's true, but if you're not suffering from dysentery, you're a better fighter than
clearly, right? That makes sense. So take a little shift here. So again, you've always really taken that building science approach. So even though I think people in the industry consider you an indoor air quality guru, and like one of the formative people, in the earlier days of the industry as it was starting to evolve a little. But you always took that approach, and how did you get there? Like where did you start so that you looked at it from that, with that lens? Does that make
during the oil embargo, it was the
72, 73?
Yeah. Oil prices skyrocketed, and there were lines. You could only get gas on every other day, or depending on what your license plate number, ran into an odd or an even number, stuff like that. And I thought, I grew up in a building family, and my uncle was part owner of Evans and Ross Construction. my first job was a mason's tender, in which I learned my first building science principle, which is if they're not going to see it, don't bother to strike the joints.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that
It looks
means,
good for my. That goes right along with looks good for my house.
yeah, that's exactly it. It means that if in the ceiling plenum above the corridor in your public school, there's holes into the hollow core wall, and that they're all the whole corridor wall is now a plenum, and it's being depressurized by the air handler and sucking it. So you can transport all kinds of contaminants or odors or particulate matter through, because there's these hidden pathways. There's holes and passages that ordinary people wouldn't think of as being a way to transport carbon monoxide from the tuck under garage to the fourth floor of an apartment building.
And that's really one of the fundamental principles of even the whole building air quality book. Is that the transport mechanism, right? For a pollutant to be a problem, it has to get from where it is to the occupant, right?
Yeah, and if you can't deal, I mean,
pathways. It's all
It's
pathways.
obvious that if you can get rid of the source, that's the way to go. But if the source is the kids, or the source is a carpet or a paint that's reacting with sulfur compounds and gypsum, then you can't get rid of that source in any easy way, and you can't put an exhaust hood over it. So yeah, you have to intervene in the transport mechanism. You have to paint the wall to keep the ozone in the 40 parts per billion ozone from reacting with an antimicrobial in the paint, and that solves the problem.
It's interesting too, like a lot of that, those principles, have really been researched and proven a lot. We were talking about the University of Texas, Austin, some of the research they've done a lot on those, and there's been other
Yeah.
studies, obviously, but that group has done a lot of studies on ozone reacting with the actual building products or cleaning products and the reactions, the different types of chemical reactions that you get that are a bit more adverse than maybe we suspected.
Yeah, well, yeah. I first learned about the ozone stuff from Charlie Weschler.
I know Charlie. Yeah, and Charlie's been on one of our other shows, Indoor Environment.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, to get Charlie on, I love listening to Charlie. He thinks so clearly about things, and he knows so much. So
yeah, and he's definitely Charlie's definitely. I think there's a lot of you that just to me are just very very much the thought leaders in the industry. There's we wouldn't be where we are today without all of the work that you guys have done for these decades, and that's true. I don't think we're where we need to be either. I'm going to qualify that by saying it's like I'm a little disappointed because I had these aspirations as a young man coming in, in the mid 80s, that we were going to, by 92, 93, when there's proposed indoor air quality legislation, all this stuff was going to happen. Oh, we're going to fix everything. We're going to fix schools.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell? It's like 2022 and we're still talking about getting, air changes in classrooms and like,
yeah.
I don't know. 2 words: deferred maintenance.
Well, deferred maintenance in almost every aspect of our culture has really taken a toll on us. It's an easy number to cut when they're doing the budget, the maintenance budget, and it's hard to. And if for building maintenance, if you're not talking about residential, but if you're talking about building maintenance in commercial and public buildings, it doesn't frequently get designed in any reasonable way. Like, there's maybe not enough custodial closets.
Oh, lost your audio there. Hang on for a second, Terry. We lost your live audio. And I'm not sure why. I went in and played with the mic setting, trying to adjust here. Yeah. I'm gonna pull you out. Yeah. I love live show technical stuff. We'll pull you out and bring you right back in and see if that resolves it. Let's see if that fixed it. No. Yeah, you're muted for some reason, Terry. Let's see if we can figure this out. Um, let's see. Hello, hello. Terry, I'm going to ask you. This is going to be crazy. You can hear me, right? I'm going to have you log out and log back in again, and see if it pulls you back in. That's a major pain in the butt.
Okay, I'm ready.
Oh, I got you back. Wait a second. Your audio's back.
Okay.
I have no idea why it suddenly came back, but thank you. All right. Thank you. The television gods have fixed it for us. Thank you.
Sometimes the magic works.
That was so weird.
That was weird.
Because it's just when I was trying to just edit your mic setting a little bit while you're going, and and also it's like, I'm like, no, it's like, don't screw with stuff when you're live. Yeah, anyway, it's okay. That was like 60 seconds of horror for the show host, but we're good. As you were saying before, I rudely cut off your audio source.
Well, I can't remember that far back.
I can't either. Let's just move on. So, but yeah. Anyway, you've taken that. You have taken that approach of understanding the building dynamics and understanding how things interact, right? Because that's kind of the important part. It's not just the pollutant. It's it's.
Hang on, just 1 second. I'm online. Okay. I'll be up in a minute. I'll be up in half an hour.
Yeah, 31 minutes actually.
Yeah.
But that's that approach. I think is just so much. It makes more sense. It really does. Like you take more of a holistic approach, looking at the whole building as a system of systems, right? Basically.
Yeah, that's a combination of, as I was saying, growing up in the construction family, and being a mason's tender and then a carpenter, but also from the time I was in fourth grade or so, and knowing that I really wanted to study physics. So it sort of is a funny combination of hands-on skills and knowledge, craft knowledge of construction, and the fundamental principles of mass and energy, and plus a short attention span.
Well, yeah, well that helps. I mean, I that's the only part that I have similar to you is I have the short attention span. I don't have any of the knowledge, but I definitely can't stay focused. One of the things you did in a presentation years and years ago that I always thought was fascinating and simple, but really gets the point across, saying when you're talking in terms of thermal boundaries and pressure boundaries on a building, and that you should be able to put the pen down, whatever color it is, and draw all the way around, and it should go from end to end, right?
Yeah.
Have a complete thermal boundary and have a complete pressure boundary. And that's such a simple concept. It's constantly missed.
Yeah, that is something that has seeped into the U.S. Construction industry, the design and construction industry in the U.S. Did you see the cat?
I did, yeah, kitty. The cat's good.
Yeah,
that's climbing your car.
The idea of being able to trace the insulation layer, the rainwater control layer, and the air barrier around the building has really been widely distributed, and I give Joe Steverek a huge thanks for doing all that work of getting that information out to people.
Sure, in the last 25, 30 years, he's been really trumpeting that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's changed the way buildings are constructed. Initially, residential buildings, and eventually the commercial institutional folks have caught up with that in a lot of ways. And we're getting much better buildings than we did 30 years ago or 20 years ago. Still, spec buildings are still a problem because You don't know who the owner's going to
Yeah,
be.
and there's still a lot of construction crews that really just don't do the appropriate details to flashings and things like that. That really just come. I mean, in my experience, I've seen in stick frame construction, one of the biggest failure points, right, are going to be window and door flashings. It just
Yeah,
seems like that's just a repetitive problem that you just run into all the time.
it's it's an educational problem in a lot of ways. That I can when the Army Corps of Engineers decided they wanted to blower door test buildings, and they have a standard for all their federal buildings. All federal buildings have ended up. We worked with um, some of the big contractors that build those kinds of buildings to improve their envelope detailing, and the, they would learn. They would pick it up. The architects they worked with and engineers would learn, and they were doing a great job. And after about 3 or 4 years, we'd get the same company. We'd go out and we'd get the drawings and we'd go like, oh my God, they didn't learn anything. What the heck is going on here? And
And why is that? Is it just that people are just driven to go back to their old ways unless you constantly beat
it
them over the head with it?
no, it's well, we have education is a continuous process. There's always people leaving the jobs. There's always people who are coming in, new people coming in, uh, and even if you got two people on a 7-person team who know about these things, they don't always win the arguments. So it takes and that I think is just the human nature that I mentioned hasn't really changed in our stories for 5,000 years. That's how we are. I try not to fight that. I try to realize that um, how many times do I have to teach it? As many times as it takes. That's what
That's
we
a key
have to
point
do.
you hit, though. Education is a continuing process. You're never learned up, are you? It's like you shouldn't
No,
be.
no, I feel astonishingly stupid all the time.
Okay, but there smart people feel that way. That's the problem. People that are not smart tend to think they know everything.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
right? People that question themselves and question their
I'm,
knowledge have to be people that actually can think.
you're triggering a memory for me. The German, be, before the Nazis, the Socialist Party in Germany took over their highest ranking general. It said that it wrote that he divided his officer corps into people who were intelligent or stupid, and people who were um, industrious or lazy. And he wanted his closest officers to be intelligent and lazy because they would get it, but they would delegate effectively because they were lazy.
You know,
And he said, but the people you have to find quickly and get them out of the army are people who are stupid and industrious.
that's a dangerous combination, is it not?
That's what he said. He said they'll destroy your army.
And that holds true to our industry too. I think, unfortunately, or anything, actually, any industry. It's crazy. In earlier today, so I had a phone call with Susan Valenti, who's our editor of Healthy Indoors magazine, and she raised a couple of points I thought was interesting. One being that is there actually an IQ or IEQ industry? Is there really an industry, or is that just like this tent that has a lot of different disciplines underneath it? Because it doesn't act like it's a real industry. Like you've been in it for, no, I mean, seriously, you've been in it 40 years. I've been in it 30 plus years. And we still, like, overall, we haven't made the substantive change that we maybe should have made in the time we've had to do it. I mean, collectively, I'm not saying you individually, but overall, right? And it's not like we're a single discipline, like, somebody does plumbing, or, like,
Yeah.
things that are very easily to define, like, do you agree with that? That's an
Yeah,
interesting point you made.
I do agree with that. The industry is I think it is an industry. It's just a diffuse industry. um, many facets, many disciplines and livelihoods that come together here, and many of them are small shops. We're not like the pharmaceutical industry where there's five or six corporations that run the whole thing,
Hmm.
and they can make changes that because they're well funded and focused. They
Sure,
can
they
make
have
changes.
resources, and there's
Yeah,
you're right. I mean, they collectively have control of it, whereas
they do,
yeah.
and they can prevent progress very easily, and they do.
Hmm. But
So
but that
we,
creates an issue
we,
for
we don't
this
have the
industry.
leverage, Bob.
Yeah, we don't want leverage. But that creates a problem, right? Because how do we come to consensus on issues? It's difficult, right? Because there's so many different players with so many different agendas.
Well, you're
It's not
talking
there's
to
not like,
the
who's the organization that, is in charge of indoor air quality? And this is the thing in my call with Susan earlier today, she said the same thing. It's like there's every few years some organization champions, the cause of indoor environmental quality
yeah,
stuff, and they're going to be the leader,
yeah.
and then and then they kind of fall by the wayside, and nothing changes. Who'll be the next leader?
Yeah, well, I don't know. um, I recall an old saying about was a guy in Alaska, and I know it was McPhee, um, the curve of binding energy, and coming into the country. And he said when he went to Alaska to learn about Alaska to write the coming into the country book, the cab driver said ask him who he is and what's he doing. He said, "I'm a writer. I came here to get a story." And he said, "How long you staying?" And he said, "Well, I think I might stay for a few months." And the cab driver said, "Oh, you're writing a book." And and, and he said, "Well, how did you know that?" And he said, "Well, when a writer comes here, if they're staying for a day, they're writing a newspaper story or a radio show. And if they're staying for a week, they're writing a magazine article. And if they're staying for a month or two, they're writing a book."
And I missed your point on that. I've got to be honest. I'm
Point,
actually
and
feeling
I
really
do have
obtuse right now.
one.
No, because I know there was a really witty point there, and I feel like it's like it went right over.
Well, with my short-term memory, I don't recall either. So,
Perfect. Perfect. Classic. Oh man.
um,
Uh,
so
yeah, so here's the thing. So, you're heading toward retirement because you're not totally retired, so you're not retired yet. Don Weeks keeps saying he's retired, but he's like the president of IEQGA, and he's
yeah.
like, he's on the committee writing the rewrite of the bioaerosols book, which X
Oh
Springston and
God.
Krauss and those guys and Sherry Marcham and all them, and so he's retired. Like, I don't know, he's not retired at all. I don't know, retired, maybe he's not
Yeah,
billable
he's
hours. He doesn't have
cut.
billable hours
He's
anymore.
cut back from 8 hours a week to 60.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he just cut back probably his billable revenue. That's all he's cut back. He hasn't cut back his
Well,
work.
there is that.
So I guess my question is, like, I, there doesn't seem to be a mechanism by which we foster the new generation of people in this
Mm.
industry. And I know in pre-show we talked about this a little. There's I mean, not to say there's obviously a whole new generation of people in the industry coming up, but they don't seem to have the same from my perspective, they don't seem to be the same as we were coming up in the 90s, in early 2000s, where we were like constantly trying to push the envelope and push things forward and make change and do stuff. And it seems like at least a lot of the people, at least on the private sector side, I can't, academia is a different story, but on the
Yeah.
private sector side, seems like they punch their time clocks. Like, I mean, there's people doing the work, but are they actually moving the industry that forward?
Well, they're maintaining the industry,
Okay, all right.
which is, and if you think about things ecologically, the when you have a big disturbed system, it's the pioneering species that do well, and they reproduce quickly, they have rapid growth. That that that's kind of where we were, and so that was valued. But as the secession occurs and you get um, more longer lived species, the more and more of the energy goes from growth into maintenance. And so it makes sense that we don't need eccentrics like me in an industry that's more maintenance oriented.
Yeah,
We need
but are we
people who can do the work competently um, and an economically affordable way. That's and that and it's a livelihood for them.
but
I
are
mean,
we are we at that point yet, Terry, though? I mean, like, I don't think the industry has evolved to the point where we can say we're in the maintenance point. We still haven't figured out how to make buildings really healthy for people yet. I mean, we figured it out,
well,
most of it, but we haven't evolved to the point where that's where we're at, where we're actually maintaining healthy environments. Have we?
well, it's in a bunch of ways we've always maintained healthy environments, and that's what I think of the invention of chimneys as one of the first innovations in indoor air quality, and the folks who designed and maintained indoor combustion devices were the innovators and the inventors. So it's cycles. It goes in cycles, and
Hmm.
right now we have learned a huge amount in the last 40 years about the indoor environment and what causes health problems or health problems for the building itself, and we've learned how to intervene in them. And, and with the new generation, they're going to figure out the stuff that I got wrong, that you and I got wrong, that Bill Turner
Okay.
got wrong. you know, they'll have to fix that stuff.
But you guys got a lot right. And I guess the concern is how do we make sure that all the stuff that you learned, and I say you collectively, you, Bill Turner, there's a list of, 50 people that really were, maybe more than 50, 100,
Yeah, certainly
that
more than
really,
50.
really were the names that you saw repetitively as I was coming up in the industry, seeing these same people, and how do we I guess the question is how do we make sure that we pass the baton effectively, and not lose a lot of, because I'm seeing this, like, just in industry, facilities management people, where people that run
Oh
plants.
yeah,
I'm not going to pick one of my big clients, a government entity. Most of the people have retired. I've worked at this facility for 27
yeah,
years, so they
absolutely.
had a great crew. They knew how all the mechanical systems worked in all these buildings, over 2,000 systems they were maintaining, and now everybody's retired and they've never written or logged any of it down. So that, like, that, all that experience is gone.
Yeah, yeah. It's I'm Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Blade Runner, the soliloquy in Blade Runner with Rutger Hauer, sitting there holding Harrison Ford by the hand so he doesn't fall off the building. That's it. The things I've seen that won't be passed on. Or cleaning up here, I've got boxes and boxes of all the raw data from all the research projects, and it's never been even 25% mined for what we might have learned from it. And I was thinking, well, who could I give that to who would be able to find some use for it? And I thought, well, there are lots of people I know who could find some use for it, but they have the same big volume of research project data that they've never had the chance to fully explore. And they're never going to have the chance
Right.
because we never have the budget to really explore the data that we collect. So it's that's I see no real solution to that problem.
Well, maybe for the data, but at least for just for the methodology, for just, like the maybe the 10,000 foot or 5,000 foot overview of just how you would approach a situation. And not to say that's the right way or wrong way, but it's a way that's proven, for you for decades to be effective, right? And it just
Yeah.
to me it makes no sense to have the next wave of people in this industry have to reinvent the wheel
Well,
necessarily.
the the things that seem to work for me and that I've seen work for others is to maintain your curiosity. And when you're curious and you have developed the skills to design an experiment or a test that will give you a result that is meaningful, um, those are the skills that can be taught. That's the 10,000 foot overview, how to actually be a critical thinker and and figure out the question that's very useful that almost no one ever asks themselves is how do I know what I know, and how do I develop confidence that what I'm doing is working the way it should, which is at the heart of commissioning buildings.
Hmm.
It's exactly that, and
Sure.
that's when I'm part of the commissioning team. I'm always working with the trades, and that's always my first question to them is, when you do your work, when you install your product, how do you do something now? I know you do something now because you're a competent workman. What do you do to convince yourself that it's installed correctly and it's going to function the way it should work? And they all do something for that. They all have ideas and they all have answers for that. And so what we're going to do is document that, and and we're also going to come around and we're going to test. We're gonna inspect, and we're going to talk to you, and we're going to ask you to take pictures and write down the things that you're doing that demonstrate that you've done a good job.
That's maybe is the $1 million question, right? You know, how do you believe you know what you know, and then documenting. But that's the key, right? Otherwise, if we don't document what we've done and how we got to where we are here, it, it will be lost. Or a lot of it will be lost. The process,
Yeah,
right? I mean, just you
it's
can only pass so much
lost and
down.
found.
Well, lost, reinvented. Yeah, people are gonna
Yeah.
rediscover, the same concepts, I guess. The forward thinkers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Uh,
myself invented some linear algebra principles that I in order to model thermal performance of building assemblies and stuff like that back in the 70s. And it turned out, of course, there was an ancient body of knowledge in linear algebra that
that did the same thing.
yeah, yeah, Newtonian approximations and Euler
Well, that
equations.
means you were on the right track,
Well,
or
it
you were
means
both wrong.
I have one of the finest minds of the 16th century.
Well, you've had a long career. I mean, that's
uh, so
oh my
so
goodness.
we're continually reinventing things, and there's so many of us, and that's the way we work.
Hmm.
And it's a wonderful way. We also I think, and maybe America leads in this. We muddle through. We like ants trying to move a moth through the forest
Yeah,
of grass.
yeah.
But we do it, and it bubbles up from us. So that's where we're headed. And when you see that work that needs to be done right in front of you, do it.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Um, Oh, Andre Fennell made a comment in here a while ago, and I'm just seeing it now. So he made a comment about the codes. You know how codes have been, how they've progressed, and because there has been some building codes have changed a bit. But I mean, I guess
Absolutely.
qualify the fact that a building code is the lowest denominator standard that you can get away with building to,
Well,
right?
it's true.
Right?
Um,
It's the least acceptable. That's the bare minimum.
of course, I'd like to say thanks for the comment, Henri, and it's always good to hear from you. And I've learned so much from Henri over the years. The second thing I like that's coming to mind though is back in the 80s, Chuck Silver and I, for the New York State Energy Office, did a series of workshops for builders. And when we first did the workshops, we got people who were kind of pioneering souls who wanted to figure out how to make low energy use buildings and not have the problems. And by the fourth year, the code had changed, and you had for example, have windows that met a minimum standard, and you had to insulate the basement. and then we got all of a sudden a whole flux of people who had no interest whatsoever in the science of buildings, but the code had changed, and they needed to know how to insulate a basement. So that I Henri is in my experience correct. Early on you get 10% of the people who are out there because they're curious, they're interested in it, and they bring some other people along with them, and then at the end, when you finally get a minimum code about the thing, you get the final 10%
Hmm.
who comes in with the agenda of trying to figure out a way they can do it that looks like it works but is cheap. And yeah, couldn't we just staple bubble wrap over that foundation? you know well, no, that's fire hazard. We can't do we
But
can't
yeah,
do that.
that's a good point, and I think especially in the residential, well, no, this is true not just residential construction, commercial construction. There's still, there's a ways to go with that too. I think what's your
Yeah.
feeling on that? Are we more attuned to doing things better in the commercial side or the residential side, or neither? I mean, how do you see it?
I think it's much easier to make changes in the residential side, um, because there are far fewer players on the team. If you go to this is something I learned from watching Joe Steberk over the years. If you make an inroad with a vice president at a company that's putting up 10,000 houses a year or 2,000 houses a year, and you convince that person that really this house should have some ventilation, or really this house should pay attention to the flashings around the windows, and if you do that stuff, by the way, we're going to cut your warranty cost by 80% over the next 2 years. Joe was brilliant at making that kind of thing work, um, and and is brilliant at reaching key people to make changes that multiply and spread out.
Right. In
Uh,
that case, that person can affect some serious change if they're building thousands of homes. It's a builder of that
Absolutely,
scale. Yeah.
and it can change very quickly with that
Hmm.
kind of a thing. But commercial buildings and public buildings, institutional buildings, there's a large array of professionals involved, and the architects,
Hmm.
engineers, landscapers, owners reps, clerk of the works, general contractors, subcontractors, multiple
Construction
general
construction
contractors,
management firm on top of that. Yeah.
construction management. It used to be the clerk of the works.
Yeah.
When I was young, it would be the clerk of the works, and they were, and so it's a lot more complicated, and they all have their own knowledge set and skills that they bring to the job, My experience is the problems largely grow up in the cracks between the disciplines there. So the solutions are usually trying to get people together. But for me, one of the I think the most effective things I ever figured out how to do in commercial and institutional buildings is when I've been part of the commissioning process for the envelope of the building, and there's no matter how many drawings you do or how much detail or what's in the specs, there's always conditions where you've got 4 different materials coming together, and there wasn't a detail drawn up that really shows how to do that. And when I would be doing inspections, I'm always thinking about where those spots going to be, and when they come up, I just turn to the QA guy from the general, who I'm usually walking around with, and they say, Roger, we need to get who's on site from the roofers, who's on site from the window guys, and who's on site from the insulation guys. We need them all up here right now, because we're all going to look at this together, and we need who's here from the architects and the engineering office. We're gonna look at this until we get ideas, and then someone's going to write architect supplemental instructions, or they're going to issue a new detail, or and I don't care about how you guys do that, but here's what we have to actually get done. And it's great because when you get the trades people there on site, they look at it and they go, oh yeah, we had this product like 4 years ago that we used, and this is how, or oh yeah,
you're drawing on everybody's expertise and experience there, as opposed to having somebody just trying to come down from above. But do you think that's normally the case? I mean, that you're describing a project that you're involved in, where you have somebody like you there that's actually saying, hey, collectively we got to get together. But is that the norm, you think, in construction, or are you an outlier there?
I'm probably an outlier. It's way more common that no one will notice it until the first year of occupancy.
Right. When you start having failures.
Yeah, when it's failed, that would be probably one of the more common ones. But there are some very, very skilled and knowledgeable and intelligent people working with the subs and in the architectural firms and in the construction management companies and the big contractors. They have some very skilled people, and there are a lot of them who catch this stuff before it all falls apart. But a lot of time, and they're more likely to actually call an informal. We're going to have an informal meeting right now.
Well, it's in their vested interest to do that, as opposed to having a failure.
And the best of them know that, and they develop those people to be their troubleshooters and to keep things moving along. But as I said earlier, the construction industry, there's big turnover. It's boom and bust. People come and go, and we lose that knowledge sometimes, and we lose the winning teams sometimes because of that. But that certainly is in my experience, the best way to get a building that works is to have someone performing that function of looking out for where the trouble spots are most likely to be, and getting the people who are going to be responsible for actually making it work right there. And anytime I can use their idea, I have a better chance of getting it installed correctly.
Well, you're getting buy-in. I guess it's a collective. It's a collective solve to a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. If I come up with an idea that will work, but the worker doesn't like it, there's a pretty good chance it's not going to work. it's going to get
Because they may
installed
have
in
a
every
reason for
demo.
why they don't like it, and it may not just be being stubborn. It may actually be like this isn't
Oh,
going to work. They see
yeah.
like I don't agree.
And they get the chance to say that stuff when I'm
Yeah.
on the job. And in my initial kickoff meetings, that everybody's there. We put all the details that I'm nervous about up on the board, and the architects and the engineers are in the room, and the mason who's installing the flashing gets to say, "Oh, well, that's never going to work. Look at how it sequences. That's well, what can we do to fix that?"
Right. And again,
And
that's using a team approach.
yeah,
It's the best way to do things.
that's what works in my experience.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
totally agree.
works.
I totally agree. I mean, all my years
What?
as a football coach, same mindset. You want
Yeah.
like the head coach that goes out there and knows everything. No, you want a collective team of assistant coaches, and you powwow. And it's like, what are you seeing?
Yeah. What's going on here, and what can
What do
we
you
do to
think? How do we
fix it?
handle this?
And why would we want to shut out the brilliance of the 2/3 of the people working on the job?
You know why? Because it's human nature in some people that are either trying to protect their turf or just the egos, right? They don't want to acknowledge that we are all better through collectively working together. It's
Well,
it's called
well,
evolution. It's a little bit, but it's hard for some people to grasp the concept that you
it's
may not know everything.
it's muddling through. Yeah, Jim Fitzgerald, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you met Jim.
I
Jim,
have.
Jim is we're burning daylight, boys.
Yeah.
Kind
Well,
of
he's a
guy.
little outspoken too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's not shy about things, but the- he one of the this is part of, I think, Jim's own brilliance is and genius is, um, he gets a quick sense of what's going on, and he goes forward with a solution. And I'm way more likely to study it and think about it and try it, thought experiments or do some testing, and then Jim will get it done and be off and gone while I'm still scratching my head with a perplexed look on my face.
But, there's different approaches. I mean, the one thing that
Yeah,
you did mention, I think it's
you
it's
need
super
all
important
that.
that but you know what? We still, it's critical that all of us, but I'm going to say us, and I'm giving myself more credit than I deserve. All of you guys that are really the brilliant forces in the industry, you know, eh, somehow transition impart your knowledge on this next phase of the industry that and now it's like an old geezer saying like about those new kids,
Yeah,
but I
that's
mean
right.
I still, first of all, I can't even reconcile that, Terry. I can't even deal with the fact that I'm one of the old guys now. That's like I'm really struggling with that. I'm not gonna lie.
I have bad news. It gets worse.
Yeah, I would say it's not. None of us are getting out of here alive. I mean, that's this is
Yeah.
how it all ends. Uh, but that being said, it's like it really is. I think it's really important. So what my one challenge to you is, I'm going to say, I'd like to see you and other people, with your experience and your level of involvement all these years in the industry, uh, you know, at least maybe try to get involved with via our community platform, which we launched. We'll talk to you more about that. We have that portal that is really open to the world, that people like yourself could be thought leaders there. I'm not saying spend all your retirement years doing that, but at least kicking in here and there, maybe and just giving an opportunity to engage with some of the newcomers to the industry and some of the mid-level people that could benefit from that. Mentoring, I guess, for
Yeah.
want of a better word.
Well, that's
you
it.
know I think we need that.
Working together.
Well, we're over time now, and I know you're
Yeah.
you're you're in the middle you're in the middle of moving, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like,
I have a deck I'm taking apart right now.
oh, jeez. So yeah, that's challenging in and of itself. So I'm gonna do a couple credits here, and then we'll come back for a quick wrap. Um, So as I briefly alluded to, Healthy Indoors, we've been involved with a lot of things. Obviously, our flagship is healthyindoors.com, where you can get to our monthly publication, Healthy Indoors Magazine. That's accessible to everybody. It's free to the world. We're coming up on our 9 years publishing it, which that went by real freaking fast. We also have a community, and the online community is a platform that you can participate in, that allows you to let me just get to it. Oh, no, I'm losing it. This is one of those days of trying to get organized. There we go. That's the slide I want. So community platform is basically a platform that's centric. You can see Terry's bright face there, but it's Healthy Indoors online global community. It's at global.healthyindoors.com. We have all of our content archived there from Healthy Indoors, the magazine, the shows from other organizations, live stream events, but a lot more than that. It's actually a place where you can network and communicate with other people in the world. There's a whole networking platform there, so it's really quite revolutionary. And again, I think this is a place where we can probably get people together and do a lot more and discuss things. I'm going to roll a quick commercial for it just because why not? So, yeah, that was loud and abrupt, but it's live television. Things are not always as smooth as we'd like them to be here. Um, I, Terry, I so appreciate. I'm telling you, I'm having you here on the show. I've been wanting to have you on the show for 3 years now that we've been doing the live weekly show, and I'm just happy that you could take time out of your day to be here, because it's always a pleasure to see and speak with you. You know,
Well, thank you.
you know.
The feeling is mutual.
And that means a lot to me, buddy. It's like, yeah, I truly love you, man.
Uh,
So we're going to be back next week. Well, of course we are, right? Because now that we
yeah.
restart the 20, well, we took a long pause. I was off for like 7 months because I had other things to do in my life. But I can't. So we're doing the weekly show again next week. We're going to be joined by Michael Pinto. We're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. He did a lot of field study work with Air Answers technology and stuff, and it'll be interesting. He's in the last in April and May, I believe April and May. Yeah, get this straight. The April and May issues of Healthy Indoors magazine. He published a two issue article on that, and so he's coming on next week to speak about it. So I'm real excited about that. Again, we'll be back 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time next week for the Healthy Indoors show. Again, my guest Terry Brennan. Great to see you. Good luck with the rest of your move. You're taking a deck down. That sounds like a lot of fun. I hear the hammering in the background. It's great. So for Healthy Indoors magazine, Healthy Indoors show, I'm Bob Krell, founder and publisher, and chief provocateur here. We'll see you next week, same bat time, same bat channel, for the Healthy Indoors show.